Committee. I have a couple of questions for you, Ms. Hogan, on report number 9 on processing timelines and backlogs in immigration, refugee, and citizenship. That is a file this committee regularly interacts on. We get legislation, we review it. We've heard from the minister and the chamber about the backlogs, the new resources they're putting on the table to address the backlogs. And yet I see in your report that access to online applications for refugees is difficult, if not, it's not possible. The portals remain unavailable to refugees overseas or anywhere, and they still have to go through unsecured email, which I think you appreciate how tricky that could be. And I read with surprise, I should say not with surprise, but with concern, the average wait time for privately sponsored refugees, which is, you point out, 13 months. This is a program that the government regularly struts the world stage on, rightly so. It's a terrific program, sets us apart, and yet when you, as you have uncovered the onion, there are problems. The government has agreed with almost every recommendation, and they talk about work in progress. We're doing this, we're doing that. Are you able to assess whether the interventions that the government has said they will undertake will address the problems you have pointed out?
So there's a few issues there. I'll start maybe with the portal, and then I'll get to our recommendations and the progress. I encourage members, if you are, when you're writing a report or working following this hearing. I was at the Public Accounts Committee last week with the Deputy Head from Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada. In that hearing, she did talk about the portal being available now to certain refugee programs. So there has been progress made since the report was finalized. I don't remember exactly which, so that's why I maybe refer you to some of that testimony where she gave there. I think the important thing to understand in the immigration folder here is that there are things that are outside of the department's control and things that are inside the department's control. And so some of the things that are outside are immigration levels or conditions in a country that limit access to documents. But if we look at immigration levels, there's a certain level set every year, and that is the maximum amount of individuals that can come into Canada. In our report, we actually have a table that outlines that in many of the programs that we looked at, and we only looked at 8 out of 50, which are permanent resident programs, is that they start the year off with an inventory or a backlog of applications greater than the actual immigration level for the coming year. Then you're going to add new applications. So there will always be a wait time. So what the department should then do is how can they improve those wait times by attacking the things they can control. And what we found is that they had a lot of weaknesses in how they were managing the inventory of applications that they had. And that's where many of our recommendations were focused on. Spend time looking at the things that you can control. And one of the big contributors was that they had made a commitment in 2018 to look at sort of capacity-based work allocation. And what that means is how much capacity do you think one office can handle, and send them those applications that they can handle and spread it out. There are 87 offices across the country that handle permanent resident applications. But what we found is that they weren't doing that assessment. And they would just route applications to an office based on the country of residence where an applicant was when they made their demand. So, for example, and I'll bring it to life for you, is we looked at 2 offices that have roughly the same amount of employees, one in Italy and one in Tanzania. And Tanzania, however, receives 5 times the number of applications, but they have the same amount of people. So a file that gets routed to the Tanzanian office will sit in backlog much longer than a file that goes to an office in Rome. And so, just based on where you reside when you're applying. So that's why many of our recommendations to the department were about focusing on those unintended differential outcomes, the ones you can control, to speed up the process because there are things outside your control that you can't speed up. And so I hope that if they implement those recommendations, that we'll see an improvement in wait time, but there will always be a wait time when demand exceeds the volume accepted.
Thank you, Ms. Hogan. I wish I had more time to go into this report a little bit, but I don't, and I have to be fair